sustainability.
Grace and peace, everyone. Thank you for coming to the July edition of the Transportation District Commission Work Session. I believe we have a few items, and I'll turn it over to Mr. President now.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, members of the commission and staff. Welcome, everyone. We're pleased to have the opportunity to address a number of key issues as we are consistently focused on the long-term sustainability of Hampton Roads Transit. Certainly, we're going to zoom into the working capital line of credit and the progress we've made there. We're going to talk some about the history and what have you, but what we're doing to make corrective actions as it relates to executing that line of credit in a manner to minimize interest charges, but at the same time, recognizing that that is a vital component of our ability to deliver services. An overview, can we move, Lou, to the next? So in terms of a high-level agenda, we intend to provide a comprehensive overview of the line of credit and where we stand there. And then we want to pivot to our vision, mission, goals, and objectives, because a lot of what we're focused on as an agency is fiscal sustainability and how we provide effective service in a changing transit marketplace. So we want to address that. Then we want to discuss commission priorities. You've shared to us previously what your priorities are. We certainly want to get your feedback in terms of what you'd like for us to continue to focus on as a commission over the next year as we kick off the new fiscal year. And then we want to preview upcoming work sessions. We had a great MFAC meeting this past Monday. And certainly one of the requests was the work sessions regarding the capital improvements program and the major categories of projects. It's really been helpful to the commission and staff in terms of looking at what's important in terms of the state of good repair and what your priorities are. So we want to preview that and get any other wrap-up activity completed. So next slide. What we like to do is to move into the history and background, because there's a lot of history as it relates to the working capital line of credit. I'm going to have our attorney, Mr. Travers, to come up and put this thing in context for us, please.
Okay, good morning. I'm going to give a brief history of HRT and how we came to the line of credit currently. Going back to the formation of HRT in June of 1999, the merger of Pintran and TRT, that was consummated via an agreement we refer to internally as the merger agreement. Now, under the merger agreement, it contemplates the establishment of a working capital reserve, and that was to be funded by the member cities in addition to their annual local contributions that's calculated via the cost allocation agreement. The working capital reserve under the merger agreement is to equal or exceed 45 days of operating capital based on the then current budget. The working capital reserve fund is then to be replenished by the member cities January 1 of each year. So it operates during the year, it's used as needed, and then on January 1 of each year, the cities replenish it to its funding level, the 45 days of working capital. Parenthetically, if we were to have a working capital reserve today, it would need to be funded by the member cities in the amount of $17.92 million. And that would be 45 days of operating capital for HRT. Now, that did not occur with the operations of HRT. What happened instead was we went to a credit line. Our credit line currently is $17 million. So you can see that it is very close to what it would be if we were under the operating working capital reserve. And this has been in place since at least 2003. During the past 20 years, the terms of the credit line have been substantially the same. However, the lenders have obviously changed. As this is a financial service that is competitively bid every year. It is currently with Town Bank, and this will be coming back before the commission, I believe, at some point next year, where the new credit line contract, procuring a credit line on the terms most favorable to HRT as possible, will come back before you. But in a nutshell, that's the difference, where the agreement has called for a working capital reserve funded individually by the cities, as opposed to what the commission has opted for since the inception of HRT, was to operate with a credit line where there is no money funded by the cities, and the cities are only responsible for the interest service on that credit line. And I'm sure Mr. Burns will go over in more detail what the interest is and various pertinent terms of the credit line as we move forward. But that's it as far as history. Does anyone have any questions? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Travers. And certainly I can understand why the cities did not fund that. Can you imagine 17 million divided by 6? And, utilizing a private sector vehicle made the most sense. When you look back at this last year, essentially with strategic allocation, the cities didn't have to pay any of that interest because we took care of it through a federal expense. So clearly that was the best business decision. And, our goal is to make sure that we execute the line of credit appropriately. But the question, why do we need that? And I think it's important that we emphasize that the agency does not have a smooth flow of revenues that match regular expenses, which necessitates a line of credit. As we have said many times, there are no retained earnings or fund balances. When I came out of city management to this agency, I wanted to meet with our financial advisors, and I won't forget Henry Lee, who was the CFO, and he said to me affectionately, we don't have a financial advisor because we don't have any money. So we literally, and some of you, Dr. Woodbury, you remember Henry Lee. We start at zero every year. So, I mean, that was quite, I felt like maybe I left something on the table with my negotiations in my contract. Yes, ma'am. The letter of credit is utilized to cover expenses incurred by the agency, including operating expenses, payroll, and project expenses. The implementation of the regional transit system, which we worked very closely with the General Assembly and got that program moving in July of 2022, has increased the usage of the line of credit with additional operating and capital expenses. Now, what we're doing, and you'll hear from Mr. Burns soon, we are moving more towards pre-billing much of that. But there's, in many cases, a lag between implementing the service and then getting those reimbursements. And you have to use the line of credit to float those expenses. There's also been a growth of the capital improvements program, which is a good thing. Because the cities fund between 35% and 40% of the operating budget, the majority of our capital improvements program comes from federal and state funding. Okay, and a lot of those expenses you have to incur before you get reimbursed. So the growth of the CIP is a very positive thing, but at the same time, it does put some increased burden on the line of credit.
Sorry. Question, how long does it usually take you to get reimbursed for those, for the expenditures that you make?
And that's a wonderful question. That's a great segue into the next portion of the presentation, and we'll make sure that we address that comprehensively.
Yes, ma'am. And I'll have that on that list. It's coming up for your
All
answer.
right, thank
Yes, ma'am.
So before we move any further, we'd like just to remind our commissioners that we do have lunch available for you behind Mr. Harrell. So feel free to get up and grab a bite.
Not mine, not my bite. Leave my bite.
Well, thank you, Mr. Harrell, and thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Hello. I did also similarly, Mr. Harrell, when I was interviewing, actually back in December of 16, one of my early questions is, talk to me about this line of credit. You know, I came out of a private sector. I was in transit for a few years prior to that. And I was like, there's no retained earnings. So it took me a little while to understand the importance and the relevance of this line of credit. So Mr. Harrell and Skip did state the purpose of the line of credit, and I do believe it's worth repeating. You know, it's simply a necessary tool that allows the agency to pay its expenses and obligations in lieu of operating cash reserves, or fund balances. It's a mechanism that fills in those funding gaps, Dr. Woodbury, okay, between the delivery of federal, state, and local dollars. So that's what that line of credit does. Let's go to the next page, Mr. Liu. You know, as you know, this chart here, as you know, I list in my financials each month. I have a footnote that gives the line of credit balance on a particular day. It's usually, you know, that when we go to print the second week of the month, and I've been printing those out for a few years. So I went back all the way to July of 2012. And since I've been presenting, I used the representative day. When I was doing my research, I went to the closing balance on every month. So that's 12 years on the bank statement. That's 145 months because I kicked in June as well. Almost every month during those 12 years, there was a balance on the line of credit. So the purpose of this chart here is to share with the commission that the line of credit is an integral part of our business, and it has been for many years, and I do anticipate it moving forward as an integral part. When we review this chart, take a look here. I took an average balance of each month, and then I compared the years of 2012 to 2017. That's that green line. That represents 2017. And I wanted to compare it up to the last 6 years of 2018 to 2024. That's the bars. That's those bars that represent. So and I'm going to talk about some of the processes that we manage this. So there's also a table at the bottom that represents the data for this chart. And I wanted this just to show the commission that we do look at it. It has improved over the previous 6 years. And that leads me to the next page. Mr. Liu?
Before you go there.
Yes, ma'am.
What is the escalation of the last two?
Yes, ma'am. So that's a great question, Dr. Woodbury. This is in a fiscal year review. So if you were to look at this, so what we have is I took the averages of July for the last 12 years, and that's what the average balance of the line of credit was on that given day. Is when I was presenting it may have probably been mid-July or so. Going back from 19 all the way back to 12, it would have been the statement on the bank. So that's exactly what that number was. So I took that average. So you're reading along the bottom, that top portion, in July, the agency has had an average line of credit balance of $10,519,000. If you look at the middle of the page here, see January, if you read it this way from January, February, March, now watch it go up April, May, June, July. Many instances, that is how the agency receives its federal money. When I first got here, it was an interesting question is that I would hear, hey, you guys you guys draw this money down once a year. And that's what we used to do. And now we're drawing it every month. And I'll address that in just a minute. So the agency would receive their federal money. If you look at October, typically we get it in August or September. All right, the federal government closes in September. And the money would go down very low, down to October. They would wipe out that line of credit with those federal monies, okay? Wipe it out instantly, and all of a sudden, it starts going right back up. So when the pandemic came and the CARES money arrived, we had an opportunity for the first time in agency history to get ahead of those needs. Now, it didn't work out as perfectly as I wanted. Nevertheless, however, we are now in a position to pull federal dollars every month, right? And I'm gonna, as I state in my financials. So we're pulling those every month of what those expenses were last week. Now, we don't have 10-month lag on an expense. Now we have at best 15 days, at worst 45. Great question, Dr. Woodbury. So, and that's a perfect segment. Almost like we rehearsed, Dr. Woodbury here. So we manage, so my staff and I, Mr. Harrell, and I've shared many times, to have a CEO and an attorney with Skip that knows these numbers as fast as I do is the best thing in the life of a CFO. We manage these in indicative to any manner of business, and particularly best practice. And Mr. Harrell alluded, this is even more important today that we manage this closely, particularly with the addition of RTS, the large increase in the active projects, and frankly, a larger budget. Each of these may have a potential impact on the line of credit balance. So the larger your budget, right, the more your expenses are outstanding. So you can do the math on that. I've shared a few times, my staff and I, we review the daily balances twice daily. And I've shared with you, the very first thing I do in the morning is to check that bank account. And the very last thing I do at night is check that bank account. You heard the phrase, cash is king. Absolutely. It's always king. We also review a rolling 13-week look forward of cash activity. We also have a review of a 52-week roll forward. So we kind of know each time we know it's 52 weeks, what's 13 weeks out. And we also review how do we get better over this? So that leads me to the process improvement. Mr. Lou, there we go. We're right. What's up? Oh, there we go. Going back. So what these are is what we have implemented, what we have enhanced, and what we're enhancing. So if we're going to discuss these now, the very first thing, I just alluded to it, Dr. Woodbury. A few years ago, the agency would wait until the end of the year and draw down all those monies. What we're doing now is a federal draw for operating revenue. We're completing those during the 4th week of each month. The next process improvement is the federal draw for capital and project expenses are going to be drawn monthly, as the expenses are incurred and paid, all right? And the state and the capital projects are drawn very similarly. Not exactly, I'm glad Mr. Sparks is here. It's similar to federal, the drawdown's a little bit different. The next process improvement, Mr. Harrell alluded to, is a quarterly pre-bill for RTS service hours. The next item that we're working in process on is a monthly invoice of RTS program O&M expenses. And we also have procedures in those processes that's allowing us to get the ability to pre-bill those expenses as well. Similarly to RTS program O&M, the capital project expenses, we have procedures in process that are working on allowing us to work on a pre-bill for those larger expenses as well. And one final thing is that we have implemented we're invoicing the localities 30 days prior. It sounds simple, but we weren't doing that up until a few years ago. And so we've also broken it out. I know that, actually, I think it was Lisa Cipriano that said to break that down per invoice on operating and ACC. Mr. Chair, thank you.
So we really have, as it relates to the line of credit, with additional staff and finance, have worked very hard to put ourselves in an aggressive position where we're looking at pre-billing where we can with the RTS program very early on. With new staff, folks had to get in and get their sea legs going before we could really implement that. And Kevin Page at HR Attack has really been supportive of us. And he's currently working with us to help move to more of a pre-billing posture, which certainly will take some pressure off of the line of credit.
So before we move on, do any commissioners have questions for Mr. President?
Your microphone.
Mike, sir.
Microphone.
That you worked out an agreement with the localities to bill 30 days soon. So what did that do in terms of getting your contribution, and how did that improve or reduce the line of credit, I should say?
Yes, sir. It's a good question. We just, it's something as simple as an invoice 30 days prior to remind the cities, hey, can you get, the money to us by the first of the month at the start of the quarter? They've always been very good about paying that. We just wanted to put something as a reminder and something memorialized as well.
Now, you mentioned that the cities are responsible for paying the interest rates, not the full 17 million per year. How much traditionally are those interest payments? And are the cities currently paying those, or are they paid by other means?
Yes, sir. The commission expense, when we build our budget, is part of the executive expenses, in that those monies are shared equally when we're utilizing the traditional cost allocation. As Mr. Harrell mentioned, during these past few years of strategic allocation, the cities have not been responsible for that. Interest expense is part of the bank contract, and it is tied immediately, and it has been for at least the last 15 years, to the FRED or the Ameribor or the LIBOR rate, plus a certain percentage. As I've mentioned to you, the interest expenses this year have been very high, and that if you look at the daily overnight rate, it is 5.42% of a daily overnight rate. To give you an idea of what it was 2 years ago, it was 0.78. So $1 million on the line of credit could be substantial. It's really not a lot of money when it's 0.78. And 5 to 1 is not 5, that's 50 times higher. So it's extraordinarily high. So to answer your question, this year with these high expenses, the cities were not responsible for that payment. Moving to traditional allocation, they will be, but they are budgeted equally amongst the cities.
Okay, so currently that comes from drawing down from federal funds to pay that? Moving forward, that's going to
Yes, sir.
change?
Yes, sir. It's from when the deposits come in, any deposit that comes in hits the checking account, and then it sweeps. We put an automatic, it's not one of the things we've done. It's an automatic sweep we have, that draws down, pulls those monies down before the bank, and actually we negotiated this before the bank checks our daily balance.
And when do you anticipate cities having to pay these interest rates?
I would say it comes back to the budget process. As you know, the strategic allocation, which we've been implementing for some time, we think provides a win-win situation for the agency as well as the municipalities. The city of Norfolk this year had some concerns. They were actually broader than Hampton Roads Transit. I think they had some general concerns about regional agencies. So depending on whether next year there's strategic allocation where there wouldn't be any impacts, but if it goes back to the cost allocation, that would be the impact. Now, in terms of the total interest charge over the year, wasn't that about
640 this year, which absolutely will hurt your feelings. Now,
And that's 640 divided by all
6.
partner cities?
Yes, sir. 6. Yes, sir. So if you recall back, Mr. Lou, go back to that chart with these financials on here. So if you looked at the interest expense, if you looked at the FRED rate, that number would be flat until it hit 2 years ago, and it went straight up. So the balance of a line of credit doesn't necessarily represent a high interest charge. What's occurred this last year is an overnight interest rate that's the highest it's been in a dozen years. So.
but
What happened to the monies that were awarded to us from the federal government? The 200, was it 200,000? That
federal monies are paying that and other expenses.
they are paying that
Yes,
is coming
yes.
out of that.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so, oh, Mr. Gregg, go ahead.
Them and budget person is not here, but what, $600,000 in interest, you know, is a lot of money that we have to pay. So what would be the, I guess, downside of the cities accelerating, or more upfront of their allocation or cost of allocation amounts, so that we maybe could fund some of those things and avoid the interest costs associated with line of credit?
Remember, the interest costs are based on the average daily balance of the line of credit. So it behooves everybody to have the lowest possible outstanding balance at all time to keep those interest expenses low. We've seen in the monthly reports from HRT that when MFAC questions why the expense per month is higher in the miscellaneous expenses, it's generally associated with higher interest costs. To your bigger question on the quarterly payments, which I think you're asking,
Yes.
a couple of years ago, we were engaged in conversations with HRT, but the localities paying monthly. Their local share on a monthly basis, to smooth out the cash flow for HRT. It affects the cities in a way that it's a little bit more work, because now we're making 12 payments, because that was the request from HRT, was a monthly payment instead of a quarterly payment. So there is a little bit more work on the locality side to make that go from 4 payments to 12.
Right.
But also what it does on the locality side is that's interest earnings that we are losing on our cash balances. So the localities are front funding on a quarterly basis. In July, we paid for July through the end of September. So to pay on a monthly basis at the time when the interest earnings were low, we would lose a little bit of money at the current rates. We would lose substantially more as revenues into the localities.
So what we would lose, you know, maybe far more than what we would gain then, I guess, by
Yes.
paying.
By the individual localities, yes.
Okay.
Then, but again, keeping the line of credit balance low on a monthly basis for HRT lowers that expense to the localities.
And if I could add, some cities are more judicious than others in terms of timely payments. So I think that's important. I know Newport News makes a priority, but we won't mention names. But certainly what we will do is just continue to emphasize the importance of that, because that's part of the equation.
I think we need to start mentioning names.
We'll be happy to. Just protect me when I do.
Yeah, just not today.
Right, right, thank you. I will say, that's why we have aggressively looked at making sure, and Donna Brumbar and where's Donna? Oh, she moved, okay. She has really had a significant impact, Angela Glass and her team. We've committed to monthly execution to make sure that we are keeping those balances as low as possible. And again, a lot of those are in play now. So I would say over the last 3 months or so, we have committed, now that the staff has matured in their roles, to be able to take on a more aggressive stance in terms of making sure we're doing our part to keep those balances as low. But it's a partnership. It truly is.
Definitely. And Mr. Chair, I would like to commend you and your team for implementing these processes to impact that interest rate. The one question I would have, do y'all have any idea of how implementing these processes will bring down the interest or the line of credit, or is that something to be foreseen?
We can take a look at coming forward with projections, but you know, I think that's an honest answer.
It is, yeah, Commissioner Carey, actually, the question may be is if it's coming back to what Commissioner Cipriano had stated, is work as hard as we can to get those balances as low as possible. The federal monies are in arrears. right? Meaning both the operating and the capital, or we may have spent this at best 15 days ago, at worst 45 days. So those monies are in arrears. So the question is to work that, keep the balance as low as possible. My chart I shared with you, if you look at, so 10 million, 10 million balance with a 1% is not as substantial as a 10 million with a 5.5% overnight rate. And so we can't control the interest rates, but we can work, and just like Mr. Harold said, working as hard as we can to get that as low as possible.
Yes, and the reason I asked the question is for me, as we're growing throughout this year, I want to have the proper mindset of what to expect with these processes we're implementing. Are we going to use the rest of this upcoming fiscal year to be the benchmark that we compare any future years off of? Or are we anticipating upfront that implementing these processes are going to reduce the typical interest rate by a certain percentage? I think that'll help frame the commission mindset towards line of credit as we're doing our evaluations moving forward. Is this a benchmark year, or do we have an idea of what percentage these processes would improve?
I would say a benchmark year, but
I do too, and I'm looking over at Donna. Yes, sir, and I've shared this, and this is the perfect vehicle for me to share, is that my staff is remarkable. My senior direct reports with Angela and Sonia and Sherry, and the missing piece that we've been looking for was Donna, and it's taken her some while to ramp up to get in the groove of transit. And she single-handedly, she's taken a good bit, and being the typical CPA, absorbs all of it before she's training anyone. So we're just excited at what she's doing. And even as like Mr. Harold said, the growth that we've had the last 3 months, love it as a benchmark. Yes, sir.
So Ms. Donna, I will clip that audio when it's time for your evaluation.
She knows. She knows.
Okay.
All four of them know.
Okay, Mr. Chair, if there are no other questions, we'll move on to the next item.
thank you. And actually, it is a continuation because, as we look at our vision and mission, clearly, when we look at our desire to provide transportation solutions, we are anchored on the fact that we have to be efficient and perhaps most importantly, sustainable. Next slide. I'm not going to spend a ton of time reviewing these, but I do think it's important for us as an agency to stay focused on our goals, which is providing high quality service, fostering regional quality of life and economic vitality. Next slide, Lou, ensuring financial stewardship and cost effectiveness, which we'll talk a bit more about momentarily, and really building a culture of innovation and workforce success. And we're really proud of what we've been able to do with our union employees, as well as our administrative employees. But as we look, next slide, Lou, relative to financial stewardship and cost-effective operations, we have, with the approval of the commission, bringing in WSP to really work with us to take a look at benchmark activity and KPIs against our peers to see how we're performing as we look to do a sustainability study similar to what WMATA is doing to make sure that as we approach the next General Assembly session, and Dr. Smith will be addressing that momentarily, we want to be in a position to say how we can cut costs to be more effective, as well as areas that we think are under-resourced. We feel like we need a data-driven approach in doing that. And that's really going to be a gap post as we look at long-term fiscal sustainability. Next. What the commission has shared with us historically, and certainly we want to get additional feedback from you today, is that, as we look at our operating and fiscal conditions, and I think I'm going to ask Dr. Smith to walk us through this particular slide and really address the challenges that are before us.
Thank you, Mr. Harrell. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and others. I'll echo the chairman if I may, and this might be a good time to get your Chick-fil-A and or your lunch if you haven't already. I would get lunch right now if I could, but also, well, just wanted to share briefly on this slide, and I believe the next slide as well. And also just note at your places, there are a couple of handouts. One of those is the balanced scorecard. So just wanted to make note of that. And particularly because what you see on the balanced scorecard there are, a select number of key performance indicators that are aligned under various themes. And these themes are directly align and fall underneath the goals and objectives that Mr. Harrell just mentioned. Now, of course, there are dozens and dozens of different KPIs. The balanced scorecard is just a select handful of meaningful KPIs. And similarly, as we look at the operating and fiscal conditions, there are just so many different things that impact HRT's operating and fiscal environment day to day and going forward. So these are just a handful of high level categories, if you will. And they're very familiar to everyone here as business owners and public servants. I don't think there's going to be anything particularly new or novel, but these are certainly significant items that impact HRT. So I'll just speak to these briefly, starting at the top there, somewhat of a structural condition that's familiar to everyone. Typically, expenses traditionally outpace revenue growth. That's sort of just somewhat of a truism, if you will, in local budgeting and finance. And this really illustrates the importance of, as has already been discussed this morning, just the ongoing management discipline and having a balanced budget, as has been discussed already. And if you refer to the balanced scorecard, that happens to be one of the items that's listed there under organizational performance. The second success factor you'll see there again for FY24 is another consecutive year of positive end of year balances. So this would be the 8th consecutive year that HRT has managed to have a positive end of year balance. So I just wanted to note that. And that's also underscored in Chapter 5, which is the financial chapter of our 10-year strategic plan. And it's, of such importance, I would like to just reference that now. From Chapter 5, it makes the very strong emphasis that in no year will HRT management ever bring forward an agency operating budget that is not balanced. We operate on a balanced budget. And again, 8 consecutive years of positive end of year balances. And it goes on to say further that through this upcoming transit strategic plan, and Mr. Amoruso is leading us through the upcoming system optimization work, but through the strategic plan update and complementary initiatives, HRT will be collaborating closely with its intergovernmental partners. And I want to acknowledge as well, Mr. Sparks here with us today from DRPT, to mitigate revenue and cost concerns and to optimize the productivity and long-term sustainability of regional transit services. So that, again, is just a reference from Chapter 5, the financial chapter of the Transit Strategic Plan. Inflation, obviously, again, nothing particularly surprising here. Everyone knows that, inflation is a significant, ongoing concern. In the recent years, we've certainly seen higher levels of inflation. In fact, the highest rates of inflation since the inception of HRT nationally, over 9% in 2022. The next item, staffing needs.
Excuse me, sir, let me
Yes, sir,
interrupt you.
Mr. Chairman.
Which document are you reading off of so we can follow along with?
I was,
Or are you just?
yes, sir, I'm just
highlighting?
speaking.
Okay, what we do. So
Yes,
we
sir.
don't have the particulars of these bullet points.
No, sir, I'm just speaking
Okay.
to the bullet points. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Okay.
But to answer your question about reference document, I was referring to Chapter 5 of the strategic plan. And that's available at gohrt.com. We can send out a link.
Yeah, we can
Mr.
email that out to the
Yes, sir.
commission.
All right. Thank you.
So, the third category here, is with HRT, is with local governments and everywhere. You know, our largest and most important asset is our people. So staffing needs are obviously, in fact, that is the largest cost category in our budget is personnel, and that's very much common across the board. As Mr. Harrell mentioned, I believe already today, we just successfully completed an updated union contract. I know communication just went out on that, as well as our administrative staff. And we really need to make sure that we're attracting and retaining a quality workforce that we can continue to provide service. The next category is contracted services. This is particularly significant as we look at the FY25 budget. Cost for contracted services have increased significantly. It was a 23% increase in the cost of contracted services. And, you know, kind of going back to inflation and other cost drivers that are affecting everybody, we certainly have seen that manifest in the contracted services area. Last year in fiscal year 24, Mr. Chairman, the O&O committee considered 36 procurement contracts. The total value of those 36 procurement contracts was $214 million. The largest contract by far was the new paratransit service contract. That was a $150 million contract. Of course, that's a multi-year contract, but of the total dollar value of what the commission and O&O considered this year, you know, paratransit was by far at the top of the list. So again, contracted services have increased. The second highest value contract was the ferry service contract. So we're seeing contracted service pressures on our overall operating and fiscal environment. Well, I would, if I may, I could speak to that a little bit on the next slide, some of the strategies and tactics. But certainly open competition is embedded within the overall procurement effort. So those were competitively bid contracts, and that's where the market for these services is at this time. And that's a segue as well into the next bullet point, which is regulatory mandates, because paratransit is a perfect example. We do not get to choose whether or not we are going to provide paratransit service. These are federally mandated services, and we are obligated, and we're thankful to be able to provide this critical service for our communities. So regulatory mandates definitely have a significant impact. And you know, HRT is very unique. You know, in the state of Virginia in particular, I think we're the only tier 1 property, meaning we operate fixed guideway service. And that comes with, you know, significant regulatory requirements, federal requirements that we are obligated to abide by. And certainly there are costs associated with that. So the regulatory environment, both at the state and federal level, definitely has an impact on our operating and fiscal condition. As we turn now to look at our services, you know, just you know, looking at our historic bus service profile, and as Mr. Amoruso, you know, reviewed the origin and destination survey just recently, as has always been the case, most of our services are bus service. Over 70% of all of our ridership is happening on some form of local bus service, and some of these routes are more productive than others in terms of the amount of passengers that we're carrying per hour, per mile. So, you know, one could say that, you know, some are more cost effective, if you will, in terms of that return on investment. Doesn't mean that those other routes are not important. As the goals and objectives were reviewed previously, one of those is to serve people where and when they need to travel. So some of the services we provide are in areas that are less dense in terms of population and connectivity to employment centers and so forth.
Excuse me. but-
Yes.
All right, so if we have a service that the ridership is maybe 5 one way or 5 a day, how often is that assessed? What kind of ridership is on each one and how, whether it's, can we look at something else like the transit that we did in the North District of Newport News that was so effective, local transit?
Good afternoon, Dr. Woodbury. So planning staff looks at it on a monthly basis on route performance. And then in anticipation of sending out the annual transit service plan letters to the city managers on the first week of October, we always put in those letters recommendations and highlighting route performance that we feel might be a candidate for examination, elimination, combination of putting routes together. In particular, right now, because of the system optimization plan, we're looking at every route's performance of the last 5 to 10 years and going to come up with recommendations for this commission to consider in terms of what we want to do with those routes. But we do that on a regular basis, and there are some historical underperformers in our system, I will tell you that.
Can we mention microtransit and
Oh,
other
and
opportunities?
microtransit. So demand response. Okay. I like to refer to microtransit more. It's like I'd like a tissue. Some people say I want a Kleenex. So microtransit, it's under the umbrella of demand responsive services. Microtransit is just one form of doing that. And we have the pilots right now to continue for the next 12 months in the 2 original zones and potentially a second zone in Virginia Beach. But longer term, the future of this agency is going to have in its portfolio of modes and services, demand responsive service. There's no doubt in my mind, given our challenges with obtaining the right number of operators to run our network, that some of our underperforming routes would be better served by demand responsive service rather than fixed route service. And we'll be coming forward with recommendations for those zones.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to move a bit faster to in the interest of time. But as has been noted, we don't have a reserve funding or rainy day funding. And also just ridership recovery has been gradual. It is getting better and better as the scorecard indicates, but slower ridership growth does translate into fewer fare box revenue dollars and so forth. So again, just another category of the types of impacts on our operating and fiscal conditions. Next slide. Again, there's a lot more that could be put or discussed in terms of different strategies and tactics and so forth. But certainly the use of federal funding is a key part of supporting our operating and maintenance, both from traditional funding, but also through the pandemic related funding. And that is programmed through calendar year 2028. So we're thankful to be able to utilize that federal funding. The system optimization plan, Mr. Amoruso just mentioned, it's bolded here because of it really is that important as we work collectively with our partner cities and evaluate and take a very data-driven approach to thoughtfully consider what potential changes should occur to the bus network. That study is just so important. And with that, the next bullet, a couple down, is legislative advocacy. Just underscoring how important it is that we work very closely, again, with our local partners to seek whatever public policy support could help us in terms of ongoing sustainable funding. These things will be very much discussed and documented through the Regional Transit Sustainability Study. And again, we'll be working closely with with the commission and with member cities to determine service levels and also the resources that'll be necessary to provide services going forward. Mr. Harrell?
So the last slide here is what the commission has said to us historically is that you'd like for us to focus on effective planning and improved service delivery. As you know, we've just had some conversation around that, workforce recruitment and retention. And again, we think we're in a positive position to do that. And we're pleased with the new union contract, enhanced marketing, as well as expanding outreach and partnerships, growing ridership. Mr. Amoruso has reported that we are seeing an increase in ridership. We're not back to pre-pandemic levels, but we are seeing growth And certainly as we are able to hire more operators and implement more RTS services, where we've seen really significant growth in our ridership there. And we'll keep you afforded of what's happening in that regard. Technology upgrades, Mr. Price and his team really have accelerated work in that area. And certainly long-range planning and effective financial stewardship. I'll close, and certainly we can open the floor, Mr. Chair. We had a wonderful MFAC meeting this past Monday. Brian DeProfio, who's chaired before, is chairing the group, and he really wants us to work hand in hand as we look at system optimization, the sustainability study that WSP is doing, because we have to be in alignment in terms of how we address the challenges that are ahead. So I'm excited about that, and we'll open the floor, sir.
This is questions in reference to the success factor scorecard, and it's kind of two questions. The first one deals with the customer satisfaction score. HRT has at least, I know of two surveys that they administer that deal with customer satisfaction. The most recent one I heard about was from Tract. I guess my question is, does this figure represent the input from the survey that Ray speaks about with customers, as well as the Tract that you were the last meeting when it was presented? Are they combined in some way, or two separate entities?
Yeah, I could speak to that, I believe. Thank you, sir. So what you was reflect on the scorecard is the score from the annual customer survey that Mr. Rodney Davis conducts. And I think that may be some of the recent briefings that have been mentioned. And so that is in concert with the American Bus Benchmarking Group. We're glad to be affiliated with them. And that happens on an annual basis in the April timeframe. That they're still pulling together the final information from the most recent survey. I think you may have gotten a preliminary look at some of that data. As that final information is completed, then the scorecard, in fact, would be updated. You see where it says in progress there, we would actually insert the score. That'll take place by October.
So those numbers will be kind of
Yes, sir.
together. And the last question about the scorecard, as far as the employee satisfaction, I guess retention rate is probably the one, correct? If you're not satisfied, you can leave. Is there another indicator that employees can, enter their satisfaction of working with HRT other than just simply saying, I'm here? Is that?
Well, I'd invite Ms. Wolcott to go step forward if she'd like. I will mention that we have a range of ways that we engage with employees. Most recently, for example, Mr. Harrell on a quarterly basis does the CEO roundtables. Other survey, Ms. Majid recently reported on the results of a comprehensive employee survey, and that will now, it's a new effort, will now be an annual effort. This particular is a very much a data point of retention for administrative employees. So it's a pretty good score, and we want to keep improving on that. So.
Thank you.
Any further questions from commissioners?
Yes, I do have one. With what I've noticed, I wanted to see what you're doing. One of the red points for me was that no working reserve or rainy day funding. And on the last one, you have long range planning and effective financial stewardship. How are you coupling that?
Thank you, ma'am. As we in particular, and I may be a little biased in my answer here because will be serving as the project manager for the regional transit sustainability study. But some of the core issues that have been discussed today will certainly be captured in this study. But the goal is that this is not just a body of information that we can read through, but it's actually something that we can engage our policymakers in Richmond. We can engage the Commonwealth Transportation Board and others to actually bring additional resources to bear at HRT. That is sort of the vision for the study and which is directly seeking to support our long-term sustainability. So that's where the long-term planning comes into play.
Right, because we worked with the legislative group and go for advocacy and dedicated funding on a bigger picture. We need to look at how we're gonna do it for you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
All right, the time is 12:59. We'll take a 5-minute break, then begin our regular session. Thank you.
And please come and grab your lunch.
That's for me. And I'm like, how did you send me the email? Oh, so.
think I read all the commissioners, the commissioners that's online, he's an alternate, and Commissioner Sparks, did I call your name? Yeah, so we're fine.
Mr. Burton, has anyone signed up for public comments?
I have no public comment cards. Is there anyone here who came with the intent to make a public comment today? Hearing none, we can move on.
Okay, so before we begin our regularly scheduled agenda, I would like to take this time to honor our past Chair Woodbury for her service to HRT. 1 second, go to the podium here. See, I thought about you. Alright. So as we know, it's not easy to chair any organization, and you certainly did a great job for this past year, and I have some big shoes to fill. So in honor of the great work you've done here on HRT and as the past chair, I would like to present you with this token of our appreciation.
Is it on time? I'm sure it's on time, on budget, and the whole works.
Yes,
Thank you
ma'am.
so very much. I've enjoyed every minute of it. It's a labor of love and has been for some time. So I'll stay with you as long as I can. Then you gotta call the governor and say, appoint me to that commission. But that's after I leave. So thank you all so much for your help and your input and your hard work on, oh my goodness.
Get a good picture.
Okay. We got room. Always. Yeah. Not her.
Oh.
That's straight me. All right, thank you. Thank you. Oh.
Okay, and we do have Delegate Askew online via Zoom.
Good.
All right, so we'll move on to the next item, approval of the June meeting minutes. Are there any changes needed to the minutes? Okay, I'll entertain a motion of approval.
So moved.
Oh, is there a second?
Second.
All right, it has been motioned in second. We'll call the roll.
Chairman Carey,
I'm gonna abstain. How about that?
Past Chair Woodbury,
Yes.
Commissioner Ross Hammond,
Yes.
Commissioner Gray,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Sparks,
Yes.
Commissioner Bullock,
Yes.
Commissioner Goodwin,
Yes.
Commissioner Carter,
Yes.
Commissioner White.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, minutes have been approved.
Ask you.
He's offline. He's no longer online.
He's no longer.
No, sir.
Okay, moving on to our president's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the commission. And again, congratulations, Dr. Woodbury, for your legacy, the longest serving member of the commission. Yes, let's give her a round of applause.
That means I have to tell you how old I am.
My mother taught me never ask a woman how old she is. I'm going to, in the interest of time, I won't go through the president's report, but I will encourage everyone to take a look at that. If you haven't had the opportunity, we are very proud that Mr. Amoruso has kicked off the system optimization program that we've talked about, as well as providing additional communications to our union members with email addresses. It's important to note many of our employees don't report to a facility. They may provide what's called street relief at a particular route. So it's important that we have internal communications with our employees. So when you have an opportunity, please take a look at that. So that concludes the president's report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Any questions for our President before we move on?
I just saw something that I said something about music on the ferry. Can we go back?
Oh, yeah,
What's
absolutely.
that all about?
Ms. Majid, can you speak to this, please?
Earlier this month, there were two major events in downtown Norfolk and in downtown Portsmouth. There were two very huge music events, and what we were trying to do was to encourage people to make their way from the Portsmouth event to the Norfolk event via the ferry. And so one of the ways that we did that was to invite a saxophone player onto the ferry. And he performed for about an hour or so. And so it was a great way. We partnered with the DNC, the Downtown Norfolk Council, on this. They also purchased 50 day passes, and they distributed to the first 50 folks that were in line to travel from Portsmouth to Norfolk. So it was just a great opportunity to just, be a part of the musical festivities that were happening in those two cities. So it was very well received, and, a lot of people were really excited to hear his music.
Well, I really cannot wait for our ferry to nip and use, because I want music on that one too.
We will make sure that it happens.
Okay, very good.
That's duly noted, Dr. Woodbury. We'll move on to our committee reports, start with audit and budget review.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Audit and Budget Committee, we were scheduled to meet this past Monday, but we postponed that meeting to reshuffle our schedule a bit. We didn't have anything substantial from our auditors on the current audit that they're working on. So the next meeting will actually be on September 23rd. So in the meantime, we have our June 24 financial reports from Mr. Burns.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, Commissioner. Mr. Chair, thank you. Mr. Harrell, thank you as well. Let's each at the end, in the July meeting, I change up the presentation in the manner I normally do it. We're going to start at page 6, and then we're going to go back to page 2. Dr. Smith alluded to it twice. Where are you at, Brian? Stole a little bit of our thunder, but I would like to share. Today, I am presenting the draft preliminary year-to-date ending June 2024 financials. These are year-end, and I'm very proud to share that this is the 8th consecutive year with a positive year-ending budget status. So I did present these details in detail to IMPACT on Monday. So once again, 8 years running, we have a positive budget status to date of $767,200. While we're on this page, let's scroll up to that right side. The localities ended with positive fare box variance of 381,700. And it's also ridership increased over last year. Mr. Liu, page 2. So what we have is a draft consolidated statement of ending June 30th of 2024. The RTS revenue and expenses are presented inside the statement of operations, and they are part of the approved budget. We do separate the RTS expenses on page 3 for presentation purposes. Looking at the bottom line, the very bottom line, I got to get to my page. Let's see. Reading from left to right, under the first highlighted column, you'll see a positive contribution to the consolidated budget of $139,200. Staying with me onto the second highlighted column on the very bottom line, we have a positive contribution to the consolidated budget of $1,784,100. $400. Now, the crosswalk slide, which is presented at MFAC, does address the variance in more detail, and this does include an estimated service reliability credit if it's applicable to your city. So reviewing this, let's look in the upper left-hand corner. You see these operating revenues. Now, these are the agency generated revenues. So let's read that very top line on passenger fare, reading from left to right. Under the first highlighted column, for the month, the agency generated in fare box revenue $791,500. One column over, it was a positive variance of $82,200. Staying on that top line to the second highlighted column, you'll see that the agency year-to-date had a fare box revenue of $8,525,000 with a total variance positive of $380,500, or about 4.7%. Now, back over to the left side on the second line, we have, these are the RTS revenues. We do present these for this budget. I won't go into detail. We did not meet those expectations in ridership for RTS. However, when you consolidate both, the agency did enjoy increased rider over our budget and increased ridership over last year. Back over on the left-hand side, you'll see that we have our advertising revenue. Scroll down till you see advertising revenue. Stay on that line to the year-to-date, that the agency finished just under our projections for the year. We wound up with $768,000 in advertising revenue. It was about $31,000 off the mark. I do know that there's a contract with Centauro was just signed that set us up right moving forward for this year. So back over to the left side. Let's look at the non-operating revenue in that bold one line down. You'll see the federal operating revenues. Now, follow with me over to the first highlighted column. You'll see that the agency will draw of these federal dollars, $4,607,700. Staying with me on that line to the second highlighted column. The agency has drawn down, or as I mentioned, we're going to draw this $4 million. I think it's in process now. The agency has federal revenues of $35,009,400. One column over, we're below our projections on that, and that's a positive thing, of $3,849,500. Back over to the left-hand side, the HRRTF, these funds are in the statement of operations and they're presented separately. Staying with me on that left side, you see the state. This reflects the budgeted amount and the drawn amount. And actually, Mr. Sparks asked me at the break, we received those state monies, automatic draft on the 15th of the month. That local number, this is an accrued number. We do reflect the service reliability credit plan in the surplus if it's applicable to your city. I also have it reflected on the enhanced crosswalk and the cost allocation slide for each individual city. So reading down the middle of the line on the total revenue, right down the middle of the page, do you see the first highlighted column? The agency for the month generated $12,753,100. Stay with me to on that line to the second highlighted column. And the agency has generated $131,298,700 for the year. It's $4,878,000 below our projections. It's essentially associated with the federal draw and the RTS revenue service that did not come online. There is a note at the bottom for your review. The line of credit as of July the 16th was $3,299,000. Next page, Mr. Liu. Oh, sorry, pardon me, go back, pardon me. Let's look at the second line from the bottom. We have a total expenses. Now, these are expenses that are typically associated with business and they reflect as such. So reading from left to right, from the second line from the bottom, we have our total expenses for the month was $12,613,800, $1,087,000 over the budgeted amount per month. Stay with me on the second line from the bottom. The agency in total expense for the year was $129,514,300. And we wound up $632,300 below budgeted expenses. I mentioned each month that we complete a forensic. What we attribute the expenses this month is that we do and as we've done many years now, is a prepay on the HSA. And so that's, it gets us ahead of the budget moving forward for next year. Now we can go to page 3, Mr. Liu. So these are the RTS revenues. We separate these. These are part of the approved budget, and they include the 757 and the 15-minute service. I do, as customary, I report anything extraordinary, nothing for this month to report. Next page, Mr. Liu. So these are our charts. These are reflection in a per month view. The revenue and the expenses read the same, and that the blue is the budgeted per month and the green is actual. That gray line is last year to lend some perspective and comparison. So if you can look at here for the June here on the right-hand side, so June over June, you can see that our revenues exceeded our budget and it did exceed last year. And then on that second half over in June, you'll see that we exceeded our budget projections, but our expenses were below last June as well. Next page, Mr. Liu. So this is our operating crosswalk. This reflects the revenues and expenses that are associated between the localities and the non-localities. That bottom right-hand corner of 1,784,000 reflects on the income statement. If you go 3 columns over, you'll see $767,700. That is the budget status to date, and we're going to see that on the next page. This is the presentation. This is the table that I started with. This is the annual reconciliation via the cost allocation agreement. That thick blue line across the middle is the locality budget status to date. And as I mentioned, the agency was $767,700. Mr. Chair, yeah, that concludes, I'm looking that way, I'm thrown off a little bit. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Burns? If none, we'll move on to MFAC.
Good afternoon. I'm Brian DeProfio. I'm currently the chair of the MFAC committee. I'm just going to briefly go through the items that we went through at the MFAC committee to summarize for the board. We did go through the financial report and had a good discussion on that. We also got an update on staffing and where we are on staffing, and we continue to face challenges in terms of filling open positions, and so that was a point of discussion with the staff and how we can go about being able to make progress there, because we've pretty much been kind of at a status quo over the last year in terms of number of vacancies that we've had. And so we want to start eating into that so we can continue to restore service and move the organization forward. We also had a very extensive conversation on the grant report that was presented to the commission last month, get a better understanding of that information. The staff is going through a process where they are reconciling the grant accounts, and they expect to be able to bring that back in September and give us an update on where they are from the reconciliation of those grants. It was a very fruitful discussion on that process as well. One of the things that we're going to be focusing on over the next year is as you all know, we've been utilizing the COVID relief funds to help support the budget over the last few years, as some of the other revenues had declined due to the pandemic, and that's going to create a what we refer to as a fiscal cliff in the future for us of since we're using non-recurring money to help support our recurring expenses with the commission. And so over the next year and probably year plus, we're going to be spending a lot of time focusing on that issue. As you know, the staff has engaged consultants to do a system optimization plan as well as a region transit sustainability study. And so we're going to spend a lot of time talking about the results, how those are progressing, so that we can come back to the commission with a plan in terms of how we deal with some of those revenue challenges that we're facing. So we did spend a good amount of time going through that. The staff did present on the system optimization plan and the information that was provided to the current stakeholder groups. And so we went through that information. Next meeting, we expect to be able to get additional information on the regional transit sustainability plan from Dr. Smith, and then also the state funding formula. As you all know, and I think this was discussed at our last meeting, that the state funding formula, we're not performing as well as we would like to on that new funding formula. And so we want to have discussion and identify strategies to be able to perform better on that to increase our revenues through the state funding formula.
Specific ways that we are not performing? I mean,
We'll get a detailed, briefing next month, and we should be able to provide some additional information.
thank you.
Yeah, but I think back when the state changed the way it was distributing funding back a few years ago, we had anticipated that, it was going to potentially negatively impact the commission's revenues from the state. And so we want to get an update on how that works. And it's really a competitive funding formula with the other transit systems in the Commonwealth. So it's how we're comparing relative to the state benchmarks relative to all of the other transit agencies in the Commonwealth, with the exception of Northern Virginia, because they have a separate pot of money that they use. So we want to make sure that we're competitive. And as other regional transit systems are making adjustments to become competitive in that funding formula, we need to be able to keep pace. And so we want to be able to get some information on what are the areas that we're weak, what are the areas that other transit agencies are stronger than us, and how those trends are going, so we can come up with a good strategy to be able to really stay competitive and really become more competitive going forward. Dr. Smith, I think, was on leave, and he's the expert in that. So we weren't able to have a robust discussion on Monday, but we anticipate be able to do that next month. The other issue that we got an update on was the financial audit. Really, it's status quo there. The commission continues to be on track in terms of the schedule that they provided to the commission previously, in terms of when they were going to get that completed. But yes, fiscal year 22, the staff anticipates that will be completed and brought before the commission for approval in October 2024. And the fiscal year 2023 audit is continues to be on schedule to be brought forward and completed March, April 2025. So probably April or so 2025. And then September, October 2025 is when we'll have the FY24 audit done. And then fiscal year 25 audit, which we're just starting the current fiscal year 25, of course, but that will be done March, April 2026. And so at that point, we will have been sort of completely caught up, assuming that we are able to keep this schedule, we would be completely caught up on our audits. I think a big part of the delay was associated with changing to the new financial system. I think Connor and others may be able to speak more directly to it, but when they transitioned to the new financial system from the previous financial accounting system, there were some challenges that were created as part of that really created the delays that they have. So they've been working through that issue. I think they feel as though they've resolved the big issues that were creating those delays. And now it's a matter, and Connor and William can correct me if I'm wrong, I think now it's a matter of getting caught up, because they've kind of, I think, overcome the delays that they've had. So, but we'll continue to, I know the Audit and Budget Committee has continued to monitor that. We'll also continue to monitor that as on MFAC. One of the key things is with, the revenue challenges that we've had related to the pandemic is, we need to make sure that we have a solid foundation from understanding what our financial position is as we kind of build forward for the future. And so that is a critical point. But that I think concludes my update. But as I'd mentioned, I think the key thing that we talked about spending a lot of time on is that sort of financial sustainability area, given some of the challenges that the pandemic has brought to the organization that we're still really coping with. Be happy to take any other questions.
Any further questions? All right, if not, we'll move on to Operations and Oversight Committee, Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The operations. The Operations and Oversight Committee did not meet in July due to there being only one contract in which we are bringing today for consideration. And I would ask Ms. Luther if she would please present the contract.
Yes, sir. Thank you. As stated, we do have one contract. This will become presented in full due to the fact that we didn't have an Operations and Oversight Committee meeting. Therefore, we do not come forward with a recommendation, so we'll need a first and a second. This is to enter into a renewal contract with a qualified contractor to provide preventative maintenance and repair services for HRT's heating, ventilation, air conditioning, refrigeration, and plumbing equipment. HRT owns or occupies 30 facilities located throughout the Hampton Roads region as required and is required to maintain HVAC and plumbing systems in a state of good repair for the safety and comfort of its patrons and employees alike. Under the terms of this agreement, the contractor will provide preventative maintenance and repair services for its HVAC and plumbing equipment. The contractor will also provide repair work outside of the preventative maintenance program on an on-call basis. An invitation for bids was issued on May 15th, and 3 bids were received on June 12th from Colonial Web Contractors Company, JRC Services LLC, and Warwick Mechanical Group. After an evaluation of the bids received, HRC staff determined that Warwick was the lowest responsive and responsible bidder and is therefore eligible for award. Warwick's bid price, which includes an annual $135,000 allowance for emergencies and unplanned maintenance, is deemed fair and reasonable based on a price analysis performed and the fact that the pricing was obtained in a competitive environment. A contractor responsibility review confirmed that Warwick is technically and financially capable to perform the work. Warwick is located in Newport News and provides similar services for Hampton Roads Sanitation District, NATO Supreme Allied Command in Norfolk, and Lily Bridge Healthcare Services, Bon Secours, Harborview, and Suffolk. Warwick also currently provides these services for HRT satisfactorily. No DBE goal was established for this solicitation, and the period of performance for this contract is 2 base years with 3 additional 1-year options. This contract will be funded with operating funds. It is respectfully recommended that the commission approve the award of a contract to Warwick Mechanical Group for HVAC and plumbing maintenance services in the not to exceed amount of $811,330 over a 5-year period. Yes, ma'am.
All right, so since there was no meeting of O&O, we will have to have someone make a motion for this contract.
I will make that motion. It will help me with the news a lot.
Sure.
Thank you, Dr. Woodbury. In a second.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Bullock. All right, we'll vote.
Chairman Carey,
Yes.
Vice Chair Glover,
Yes.
Vice Chair Woodbury,
Yes.
Commissioner Hammond,
Ross Hammond,
Commissioner Ross Hammond. Commissioner Gray,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner McClellan,
Yes.
Commissioner Sparks,
Yes.
Commissioner White,
Yes.
Commissioner Bullock,
Yes.
Commissioner Goodwin.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, contract has been approved.
And Mr. Chairman, if I could end with the next meeting of the O&O will be held on Thursday, August the 8th at 10 a.m. in the Norfolk Boardroom, and we hope to see everyone there. And thank you, sir, and that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Moving on to planning and new starts.
Thank you, Chairman Carey. We did not have another meeting, but the next one will be TBD. That concludes my report. Did you hear my Jimmy the Cricket?
Thank you, Commissioner Ross Hammond. ELAC.
Good afternoon. For ELAC, looking at our meeting, we looked at federal legislative updates, state updates, and other topics. But on the federal legislative update, Congress continues to work on the fiscal year 2025 Transportation, Housing, and Urban Development called FUD Appropriations Bill. The version of the legislation reported by the House Appropriations Committee included $850,000 for HRT to purchase additional paratransit vehicles. Did y'all hear that? Okay. The version of the legislation reported by the House Appropriations Committee included $850,000 for HRT to purchase additional paratransit vehicles. The full House of Representatives will vote on the bill July 30th or 31st. The Senate has reached agreement on overall spending levels, but the schedule for individual appropriations bills is uncertain. The timeline for final passage of all 12 annual appropriation bills is murky at best. It is doubtful that they will all become law before the end of the fiscal year, so a short-term continuing resolution will be required to extend the funding. At the state level, the Northern Virginia Growing Needs of Public Transportation Joint Subcommittee of the Virginia General Assembly held its initial meeting on July 15th, 2024. The committee will study long-term sustainable dedicated operations and capital funding, as well as cost containment controls and strategies to ensure that the Washington Metro Area Transit Authority and the Northern Virginia Transit Agencies meet the growing needs of public transit in that region. HRT initiated its own funding sustainability study this summer. An interim report is expected prior to the 2025 General Assembly session. At the local level, HRT's efforts to engage all city council continues. Commissioners are encouraged to work with their respective representatives to schedule future presentations. The presentations are really designed to bring to you the results from our survey that are tailored to your jurisdiction, that will bring to you the profile of your riders, bring to you about the issues with transportation, the strengths, the pros, that very comprehensive study that we heard from Ray. But as opposed to it being the entire Hampton Roads Transit, its focus will be your jurisdiction. Of course, we would prefer it to be a work session so there can be some exchange and not just simply receiving information. Ideally, the thought being that the more informed each council member is regarding transportation, the better the decisions. Councilwoman McKellan brought that idea to us 3 or 4 months ago. And since then, we have had some presentations that have been made to Virginia Beach, to Chesapeake. And we do have Newport News City Council to be scheduled in August. So, and I understand that Portsmouth, you're looking to.
We have a manager, so
Oh.
he's well aware. I'm
Oh,
sure.
okay.
It will be on the manager's schedule very soon.
Okay, and we'll report that when that comes, okay.
Absolutely.
But we still want to get to each of the cities in the Hampton Roads Transit Authority. So we had so much success from the state and federal advocacy approaches that when the suggestion came up that we look at the locals, we thought that was just the right thing to do. So please, if you haven't gotten to us, please let us know. And if you're already scheduled, let us know so we can include it on our list. Okay, marketing and communication update. The WAVE has HRT celebrated 40 years of the WAVE trolley on July 23rd. You've heard that, of course, that was on the ocean front. The event was attended with music by Bob FM, the mayor, Bobby Dyer, and Commissioner Amelia Ross was joined by William Harrell in providing remarks. Amelia Ross Hammond, I'm so sorry. Pride Feast, marketing and communication team members participated again this year in the annual Pride Fest in Town Point Park. It was one of the most well-attended events in Hampton Roads, and the event is used as an opportunity for recruitment and to answer questions about how to ride HRT. Ferry performance, we talked about that a little bit earlier. In collaboration with DNC, Downtown Norfolk Council, HRT hosted local saxophonist Kenneth Jefferson to perform on the ferry the afternoon of July 9th. The musical performance was offered as a way to encourage participants to ride the ferry between the High Street Festival and the Norfolk R&B Block Party. DNC also purchased one-day passes and handed them out to attendees to encourage additional ridership. Norfolk Tides Partnership, HRT, was recently recognized by the Virginia Transit Association for several marketing efforts, including the successful partnership of HRT and the Norfolk Tides, encouraging game attendees to use park and ride lots and to ride the tide to Harbor Park. HRT staff presented a certificate of recognition to Norfolk Tides General Manager Joe Gregory to acknowledge this achievement. And that concludes. We will not be meeting in August. Our next meeting will be September 19th here in Hampton.
I do have a question. I know as we're going around doing the presentations with the different cities, I wonder, does HRT keep account on the need for transit in the different cities? I think that'll help build the case as we're doing our high.
Yes, the answer is yes, and that's part of Mr. Amoruso's work with your staff in terms of looking at, as you make changes to your comprehensive plan, you know, where there are growth opportunities and where there's an opportunity for additional transit. So we track that with your staff as you do your various comprehensive planning efforts.
Sure. Would it be a good idea to mention that at the actual work session? I'm just thinking back to our work session, we didn't talk about what the actual needs are to be able to, you know, move our citizens from one location to the next. The presentation was phenomenal to let us know what has been done and getting to those 4 alternate routes. But I was just sitting here thinking it will help our council, particularly since okay, I won't make that statement, but it will help our council to see the need for transit within the city of Chesapeake. And I'm wondering if that would do the same in other cities as well.
I would say yes, putting my old hat on as well. It's important that the cities get regular updates in terms of progress that we're making. And each city's a little different. Currently, you know, most city council members don't hear very much about us unless somebody's complaining about service or the lack of a shelter. So some of the good things that are happening never touch the ears of the city council folks. So I think this is a great recommendation from Ms. McClellan. We need to do it very actively and, you know, and work with the various city managers to make sure we get on the calendars, because that's the other piece. But we embrace that and we need to move forward with that. And we're committed to just that.
Commissioner Ross Hammond?
Yes, I would like to echo what you're saying, because in our city, they know about HRT. I mean, when we had the lovely cartoon book, I made sure to ask for one and put one on every council member's desk. And the same thing, we had the wave trolley. I've asked to have some of those lovely 40-year, I hope you all get to see them. It was done in-house. So share, let them know so they know what's going on each city. And of course, Mr. Amoruso was there along with our president and CEO talking about the micro transit and trying to get the second route. So that way the council members, especially who it impacts their district, were able to respond. And I think it was received favorably. So yeah, these presentations are very important, one city at a time. So commissioners, continue to lead the charge, and thank you. I just emailed Pat Roberts.
And Mr. Chair, if I may just add to the discussion, one of the things I want to say on behalf of the city of Portsmouth, and I'm very proud to represent this board, and the fact that the shelters that were installed in the city of Portsmouth, we had been talking about that for a number of years. Our people standing out in inclement weather. The shelters that have gone up in our city has been a lifesaver for a lot of folks. And it has enhanced, I believe, our ridership. So as we continue to enhance and listen to the community, HRT is our partner. It's a partnership that we welcome, that we need, and we all need to be in support of the effort here. Thank you, Mr. Harold, and all of your staff and everyone for all of the work that you did in the city of Portsmouth to install those shelters. They're great for our people and they're making a difference.
Thank you. And Mr. Chair, if I could just recognize Ms. Sybil Pappas, if she would stand up. She has been very aggressive, not only in the RTS area, but in non-RTS. We've sought grant funding to assist. So thank you, Ms. Pappas.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Uh,
Yes, ma'am.
Adding, on a more of a regional basis, at the HRPDC meeting last week, I don't know if it's been brought up, my apologies for being tardy. We invited the young professionals from throughout the region to meet with the, members of councils. And we had, breakout sessions. And every table, round table that was there, asking about things that what was needed. Public transit came up as an issue with everyone. And so, again, to the extent that we can continue to not only work with our councils, but also figure out how we can do a better job of getting into that young professional group, I think they're going to be a real advocate for transit moving forward.
Well, you can keep your light on because we're moving to smart cities.
So unfortunately, we did not meet and we're waiting for our next meeting date. So I have nothing more to report at this time.
So we're just gonna have to downstate.
Not in Norfolk.
Okay, paratransit.
Good afternoon, commissioners, Madam Chair, Madam Chair, future Sir Chair, is that what I say? Future Chair, how I pronounce you, sir?
Well, I'm the chair now, so you can say Chair K.
Oh, Chair, how you doing, Chair Casey? Oh, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing well.
All right, I just want to say to the past Madam Chair, it has been a pleasure to serve underneath your leadership and underneath your chairmanship. I really appreciate your kind words you had towards me and to paratransit and for listening to our demands and our complaints and helping us. Thank you so very much. What else am I here for? Oh, all right. This is officially my last meeting as a paratransit chairman of the advisory committee. And our last meeting will be on August 14th here at this building in Hampton. And I'd like to encourage y'all to come out because we're gonna be doing a little going away party for Mr. Keith Johnson. Is he here? Why y'all? What's up, Mr. Johnson? But we'll be throwing a little pizza and sodas away, you know, just to tell him, thank him for all his service and what he's done for paratransit. So Keith, we look forward to that and thank you, sir. I have not been getting any complaints from paratransit. I have been getting a lot of compliments. They are glad that the call center is back on American soil. They're glad that everybody is speaking English now and that they can really talk to somebody who understands where, you know, their frustrations. And I would like to thank Mr. Grant from Eastern Transportation that people is really excited about the transformation that's going on, and they're really you know, excited about the new services that you're providing. And the only complaint that I've been getting is about the system when you call in to check on your ride, that the automated thing is there. But I discussed that with Miss Amy and Mr. Grant earlier, and they said that will be implicated next week. So we're looking forward to that change, and we're looking forward to keep on working with Eastern Coach and providing the service to paratransit and his riders. Thank you so very much, commissioners, for everything, and we look forward to the new year. Thank you.
All right. We've got one more thing. Thank you, Troy. We wanted to give you an update on the transition. Like Troy mentioned, Easton Coach did take over on July the 1st. So I want to introduce Mr. Grant Holsinger. You can come up here. He's going to give you an update on that transition so far.
Thanks, everybody. Troy, Amy, thank you very much. We're excited to be here. My name is Grant Holsinger. I'm the Regional Vice President for Easton Coach Company. I'm a Virginia native as well, so to be kind of back in this area is very exciting for me. We're very passionate about paratransit at Easton Coach Company. That's our bread and butter. It's what we do, it's what we really care about. We've had a lot of success enhancing transit agencies. Most recently, New Jersey Transit, SEPTA, and Philly. We have a lot of big contracts with them. We're very successful there. So we're excited to do the same here. Just wanted to take a little bit of time to talk about our first few weeks in the transition. I want to first start off by thanking Amy and Keith for all their support day to day. Couldn't do it without them. They've really been a great partner and makes us feel happy to reaffirm the decision we made to come down here to work with each of you. Operationally, we came in day one and we were blessed with 4 o'clock in the morning downpours, flooding, a car over the bridge shut down all day. So, it's a trial by fire, but so it was a good welcome. So we appreciate that. But, it's been going very smoothly from there. There are a lot of operational deficiencies that we really needed to iron out. When we do a transition like this, you take the staff that comes over and, you start building from there. Staffing wise, we're short drivers. We're about probably 25 drivers short. So we really want to focus on that. So what we needed to do from the beginning is making sure that we enhance the rollout process to make sure that we're minimizing any mistakes we're making. When you're short drivers, you got to be perfect, pull it out. So we made a lot of changes there to calm the location down, to minimize the mistakes, because when drivers pull out of base late, there's miscommunication with the bus, slows down the service and impacts our clients. That's the most important thing. Really impressive gains there from our staff, just with what we've had currently. Our on-time performance over the last week has been over 91% pickup, over 93% drop off. On-time performance the last week that VIA had the service, it was 87% and 90%. So definitely, gains just with the operational efficiency. So we're really excited about that. The team's doing a phenomenal job there. The biggest shortfall that we have right now is the shortage of afternoon drivers and weekend drivers. We've hit the ground running. We identified that kind of before we started. But as we know in the transit business, it's a slow burn to get those drivers in the door. We hired a on-site recruiting manager that started a month and a half before we took over. So we hit the ground running. The second week of service, we had a new class in. We have 5 cadets that are finishing training this week. They'll be going into service on Monday. All be going to the afternoon and the weekend. Our training classes are 3 weeks long. Our second class started this past Monday with 13 candidates in class. They're all still there as we speak. So the next 2 weeks, they'll all be on the road doing the same thing. We have another class starting on the 12th. On August 5th. We already have 13 drivers confirmed for that class. We have 9 additional interviews today, and then we'll be doing another class 2 weeks after that. We're looking at double digits for that class as well. We understand when the fall comes, there's a rise in ridership. We need to be prepared to handle those issues, make sure that we have enough staffing, especially on those afternoons and weekends, to make sure that, that's where the bulk of the complaints are coming from. So we need to fix that. We need to have reliable service in the afternoon as well. So we're working through that. We do have a new North Side facility at Net Center, and it's been going very well so far. The staff loves it. Really safe for the vehicles, 24-hour roving security. So we're really happy to have that there. Maintenance, really happy to hear the new paratransit vehicles coming. We do have 32 new vehicles coming as well. We're super excited about. We do have a little bit of an older fleet, and that comes with some challenges. Our team specializes in maintenance. We have a lot of paratransit experience in that field. One of the things we identified right away were a lot of AC issues, a lot of wheelchair lift issues, causing recurring breakdowns. We brought our senior team in. All of them are Braun certified lift technicians, which is a really big deal. They were able to troubleshoot a lot of those issues. We've done over 25 lift transitions to make sure that they're working properly, and over 35 AC fixes. And we're continuing to go through the entire fleet there. Our PM compliance, we are working on re-PMing the entire fleet. There were some coming up through it that were not in compliance, so we're working through that. They're not uncommon in any transition we've ever done. So we're working through that to make sure our team and our senior team touches every single vehicle to make sure that the reliability it gets better. Because if we don't have reliable vehicles on the road, we can't serve the clients in this area. So that's a top priority for us. You're also going to see vehicles are cleaner. We installed a water source on the facility right away, so that the cleaner was actually able to do their job and actually be able to clean the vehicles. And we've noticed a market improvement there. So you'll see cleaner buses. Hubcaps missing on some of the vehicles. We've already placed a big order to get those fixed. spray painting the rims so they're nice and white. We want these things to be a positive beacon for Hampton roads on the street. We want to make sure everyone knows and sees that. So we're excited for the new vehicles because we can touch them with that care from the very beginning and make sure that we extend the life as much as possible. Safety wise, one of the new things that you'll see here is we have a dedicated safety program. 3 road supervisors we're going to be bringing on. We've identified those internally with senior members that we vetted, and a formal safety team and a road supervision process to make sure that drivers are periodically monitored, to make sure that we can improve them. Because one of the biggest things right now in the world today is it's hard to find drivers, and we want to make sure that we have drivers come in and that we make sure that we coach them, mentor them, and make sure that they are the safest drivers they can be for all of our passengers. That's very important. So we're excited about that. We do have, we utilize DriveCam by Lytics in all of our vehicles. They're in all of the vehicles now. They provide live footage so I can pull up any vehicle, look through it at any time. It also comes with an extensive driver training program. It identifies risky behaviors, things like that, allows us to coach the drivers on the spot so that we can fix these behaviors before they become a real problem. So had a lot of success everywhere we've been there. We're very excited for that. As everyone has already discussed, call center. Yes, call center has come locally. As you all may be aware, when we did the transition, we started by transitioning VIA over at the beginning. And the reason being is there's no way for me to be able to completely flip the script, start a new call center day one with 100% of the calls and not have a real headache for your passengers. It's been very successful. There was no lull when we flipped over July 1. Our on-site call center is here. It's about a block away from our current operations facility, just off of 20th Street and Church Street. So it's right up the street from our people. They're all local call center agents. The call center manager is a local as well, and also a former member of the operations team on the other side, and she's phenomenal. So we have taken all of the calls that are not reservation calls, and as of today, we're at 60% of the reservation calls as well. So the majority of the time, you're speaking to local call center agents, and we're hearing a lot of really positive feedback from our teams there. So we're really excited for that. We're going to be at that 100% here before we know it. We do have backup coverage with VIA through the end of September, just in case it's needed. At this point, I think that we'll be close to 100% by, the middle to the end of August. So we're excited about that. So in closing, like I said, we really are excited to be here. We're looking forward to continuing to enhance the service, getting these new drivers in. We want to, get that on-time performance to the mid to upper 90s as soon as possible. As we know, it takes a little bit of time, so bear with us, but I can assure you we are all hands on deck. We're here every single day grinding. Our team is bought in, they're on board, they want to be better, and we're excited to do that. So thank you for the support, and we really appreciate the time.
Well, thank you so much for that update. We are excited to see what comes in the future. And I would like to say to Mr. Bowser, we're gonna miss the detailed oriented presentations you gave. Whoever comes after you are gonna have some big shoes to fill. So thank you for your dedication. All right. All right, transit ridership.
What was it?
Transit ridership.
Oh, okay.
Track.
Oh.
I got you.
Okay. July 2024, Hampton Roads Transit Riders Advisory Committee, TRAC, met on July the 10th, 2024 in the boardroom of the Administration Building in Norfolk. The meeting was convened at 6:01 p.m. TRAC members in attendance were Chairperson Denise Johnson, Heather Catrone, Commissioner Bullock, and Melissa Osborne. HRT staff in attendance were Ray Amoruso, Sherry Dawson, Rodney Davis, Kevin Brown, Kim Dodden, and Henry Rideout. Members of the general public in attendance were Robert Neely, Wendy Mattis, and Lisa Dixon. The May minutes were approved as submitted. The motion was by Melissa Osborne, second by Commissioner Bullock. Ray Amoruso, Chief of Planning and Development, gave a presentation on the system optimization plan. He said, HRT is involved in a process that is expected to last 9 to 10 months, with the final plan slanted to be presented to the Commission in April 2025. He said the fare box recovery ratio is now 8.5%, down from a peak 21%, and the ridership is 55% of what it was pre-COVID. Mr. Amoruso said HRT is facing multiple systemic challenges, including COVID-19 changed travel behavior in the region, leading to a decline in regular transit use. While people have started returning to in-person work, many commuters work at home at least part of the week. Bus operator shortage makes it difficult to return service to pre-pandemic levels and provide a reliable travel option for customers. Transit operating costs are rising faster than new funding sources are becoming available. Kevin Brown gave a presentation on turn by turn, an enhanced onboard navigation system for HRT's bus operators. This system is currently installed on 15 buses, 7 on the north side and 8 on the south side. In due course, the system will be on all buses. During his director remarks, Rodney Davis introduced 2 pending new Chesapeake track members, Lisa Dixon and Wendy Mattis. He said farewell to Melissa Osborne of Hampton. Denise Johnson thanked HRT staff for their continued support. During the roundtable, Heather Catroon lauded outgoing members Melissa Osborne. Melissa Osborne made her goodbye remarks. Commissioner Bullock commended Mrs. Osborne and asked when the ABBG Customer Satisfaction Survey results would be available. Rodney Davis informed Commissioner Bullock that he expected the survey results to be available in September. The meeting adjourned at 7:01 p.m. Our next meeting will be held here in Hampton, Wednesday, September the 4th at 6 p.m. If you have any questions, Mr. Davis sitting right there. Any questions? Got it. All right. Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Denise. All right, moving on to old and new business. Does any commissioners have any old or new business to add in? If none, everyone should see a memorandum at your seat. These are the new committee assignments, subcommittee assignments for FY 2025. If you have any questions about them or unable to serve as any of our chairs, please let me know at the end of this meeting. All right, any comments by commissioners? Yes.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, I would like to bring up something about, this is hurricane season and emergency preparedness is a key point when it comes to transportation and getting people around or when they can't get around. And one of the things that I've noticed in the city of Portsmouth, we have actually evacuation points that are dedicated to where people can congregate and go to be taken to a shelter in some cases. And I did not know, it hadn't been talked about, so I didn't really want to make this as a new business item or old business item, but just wanted to see if that's something we can have in a discussion coming up for the next month, just because we are, like I said, in hurricane season.
Yeah, do we already have a work session set up for next meeting?
We do. However, we can add this as a topic that we can touch upon because, we have a plan. We've worked historically with the cities as it relates primarily to the recovery stage. And we can share where we are in addition to our protocols as well.
Okay, duly noted.
Thank you very much.
Yes. Do you have a closed session, Mr. Burton?
We do not, but if I can make one comment, we are fast approaching July 31st for the evaluations. I will give you all a report tomorrow. I think at this point, I'm about at 7 with the promises I have for a couple of deliverables for tomorrow. If need be, I will email next week. I will be on vacation. And July 31st will mark my final birthday in my 50s. So you probably don't want to hear from me next Wednesday. So please get those evaluations in.
So Mr. Burton, I'll be doing that emailing next week. Please enjoy your birthday, sir.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so we don't have a closed session. I would like to mention that we do have a transit management company annual meeting immediately after our regular meeting today. If there's no other business, we're adjourning this meeting.
But we do have to go to the transit management company meeting very quickly.
Yes, sir.
That's it.
Right, don't move.
We're all
ready.
included in that one.
Yes.
Okay, well, we will call that meeting. Yes, that meeting is called to order.
Yes, and I'd like to call upon Mr. Burton to explain what this is about. I know we have some new individuals here as well.
All right, very, very briefly, Transit Management Company is the entity that employs all of our union workforce. We have to have that separate company because prior to Hampton Roads Transit becoming a public transit entity, we had a unionized workforce. And when we became a Virginia Public Transportation Company, Virginia did not permit state and local employees to be unionized. So you could have a private company employ the union employees. And that's what we have done here. We have this meeting once a year. It is a meeting simply to approve minutes, adopt officers and the budget for the year, and then we are done. It is probably something now with where we are in the General Assembly that maybe down the road, we won't have to have this separate meeting. The only drawback may be that the retirement funds held in the name of Transit Management Company, and to get that changed with the U.S. Department of Labor under our 13C agreements would probably be a Herculean task. So we will we'll play it by ear, but that's the reason we have this meeting.
So, Mr. Chair, we just need a recommendation for approval of the August 25th, 2022 minutes.
So moved.
Second.
All right, it has been moved and second, and we'll take it for a vote.
All in favor? Nobody's all in favor. All in favor?
Aye.
Has been noted, all aye has been voted and approved. Minutes have been accepted.
The next item is the financial report. Mr. Burns.
Yes, sir. Mr. Lou, if you can go to the next page. Here we are. I'm back. So these are the financials. This is the Transit Management Company, as Mr. Burton stated, is the employer of all employees represented by the collective bargaining unit. The Transportation District Commission of Hampton Roads is the sole shareholder. The TDCHR, Hampton Roads Transit, keep all the accounting records for TMC in a unified accounting system. The accounting codes are used to distinguish TMC expenditures from that of HRT. All operating revenue for TMC is provided by HRT. Let's review the left column real quickly. You'll see the funds applied for the very top line by the agency were $53,254,164, resulting in a net increase over 2023 by $2,338,497. Stand out on the left side, the second bold, wages and salaries accounted for $38,320,487, and they increased by $2,418,968 from 2023. Stay with me on the left line to the first bold-lighted, you see total fringe benefits. Those were $14,933,677. They decreased by $80,470 from 2023. Those fringes include operator and mechanic uniforms, shoe and jacket allowance, tool allowances, CDL reimbursements. So reading at the bottom line, the total expenses, if you add the $38,320,487 plus the $14,933, that equals $53,254,164, which is higher than last year by $2,338,497. So the total expenses match the total of funds applied, resulting in a net zero or zero sum presentation. Mr. Chair.
All right, now we need to elect officers. Do I need to read the slate?
Please.
All right, so the proposed slate for president is Mr. Harrell, vice president, Ms. Wolcott, treasurer, Mr. Burns, and secretary, Mr. Ramos. And we will need a motion and second to approve this.
Correct.
We have a motion by
Second.
Dr. Woodbury, second by Commissioner Bullock.
Then it's all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Mr. Chair, the ayes have it.
All right, any old or new business? If not, we'll adjourn the meeting. Y'all have a great day.
Got it done.